Okay.
I'm just gonna say we used to phone call. If I remember, if not, I'll take it. So I'll take it down. I mean, I am. Yeah.
Meetings are recorded, so just so you know.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Is that a warning? Or is it
Just awareness. That's all. Yeah, I gave Jason an equal.
No. That microphone. I turned it on. Oh, it's still turned on.
You're just on or off, so.
Well, if the batteries die, it sure does. The batteries seem to always die on it, so. So. So I think people turn it on and they forget to turn it off.
So you're actually in a mention do until we get to see, as a rest of just to discussion. Where people are.
He's just gonna make a motion. Perfect. One more minute. I'm telling you, and that clock is still wrong, although it's not as bad as it used to be. Twice a year. It's not wind up or something. That'd be terrible. 10 seconds. All right, it is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The next item is going to be the roll call. If the administrator could please call the roll.
Trustee Pappy,
Yes, here.
trustee Haas. Here. Trustee Beckman.
Here.
President Gerke. Here. President Dorr. Here. I'm sorry, trustee Dorr. Trustee Bartz.
Here.
Trustee Miley.
Here.
Everyone's present.
Excellent. Having a quorum, we will move on. The next item is the consent agenda. We have the approval of the minutes and the general fund water and sewer invoices. Looks like we have a list of a couple additional bills here. I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All right, I'll call the roll. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, the next item is going to be for public comments. Please, if you're going to be commenting about the chickens, you'll have a place to do that later on in the agenda, not much further. This is for anything else that's not on the agenda. All right, seeing nothing, we'll move on.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion, if I may, to move, since we've got people here that in regards to this, to move item 6 subsection E up to the top after public comments. So we can discuss that. So we're mindful of residents that took time out of their day to be here.
All right, I'll entertain that. We have a motion and we have a second to move 6
I'll second that.
to move that up to,
We can just do that for justice.
well, Here we are. Why don't we vote on it since we had a motion and a second? All right, all those in favor? Aye, opposed? Motion carries. All right, so item 6, subsection E, Village of Fredonia chicken permitting discussion and possible action. I would ask that anybody that wants to make a comment would come on up to the microphone, state your name and your. Let's start with this one. Yep, I will. Okay, sorry. State your name and address so that we can write it in for the record. Also note that you can make your comments, but when it comes time for the board to deliberate on the item, there will be no back and forth. It's between the board as to what's going on. So the first part of this is I want to take a look at the, well, first I want to have a summary by Administrator Jenkins, if he could please give us where we are and how do we get here and all that stuff.
Sure. Get a brief, hopefully somewhat funny, summary in your packet about how we got here. We had a resident who had reached out to us about the process of applying for a chicken permit. That kind of opened up a can of worms that caused us to really dive into the process that we're currently using. So currently, there's a very, I would say, in-depth packet that a resident would need to pull and fill out. This includes having their signature notarized, getting the signatures of all of their abutting neighbors, and then bringing that in for approval. Once that's approved and everything checks out, they're granted the permit and they are allowed to get their chickens. Obviously, there's a limit to 6 hens, no roosters, and then they're required to then every year re-up that license. So when we first looked at it, we thought at least the process was a little convoluted, and that's when we brought it to you guys a couple months ago. Feedback that we heard was that if we're going to keep chickens, to somewhat streamline the process, it sounded like a majority of the board wish to at least eliminate the acquiring of the neighbor signatures. So what you see here are 2 options. The first option pretty much keeps your ordinance as is, and it would eliminate that requirement of getting the abutting neighbor signatures. We would have a new permit, which was in your packet. You can see this is a lot more simple than the previous one. This would be all that we would require of them. The applicant would fill this out, kind of sketch out where their coop would go. If you guys go this route, we would still probably look into a building permit process for the coop as an accessory structure. So please keep that in mind too. So that's option A. Option B was, at least some on the board at the time said, well, what if we just get rid of the ordinance? What would that look like? And we didn't allow it. So option B is what that would look like. You would strike out 3 pages of your ordinance book and would replace it by saying pretty much that fowl would not be allowed within the building. And any current licensees would be grandfathered in. They'd be allowed to have the hens up until they expire, until they pass away. And then as those chickens would expire, those licenses would go away, and then eventually the village would no longer allow and permanently within the village. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're open to feedback, discussion, and possible action tonight.
Excellent, thank you. So there's 2 different letters that we received. I'm gonna butcher names here. So Justina Cabanuk, is she here? Would you like to come on up and tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Come on up to the mic, and if it's not on, we got the other one.
I'm kind of nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Okay. So do you need me to state my name and address?
I guess.
Do you want
I
me?
don't, yes, even though
Okay.
we have it.
So my name's Justina Cabanuk. My address is 220 North Milwaukee Street, Fredonia, Wisconsin. So yeah, I wrote you guys a letter after I kind of heard that there was an issue with a resident being able to get hens due to a neighbor not, signing the documents. We were actually in the process of getting approvals at that time, and we do have our approval now. So now we have our chickens. But in that letter, I think I brought up a few points to you guys. And I think one of the main ones, and you've addressed it already, is for us who already have the chickens, letting us keep them until they're, they pass away, just because we've only had ours for like a month, and they're basically like family members at this point. It's kind of sad sounding, but we love our chickens. So, I mean, I think that that's a fair acknowledgement there. But in regard to letting people keep them, I mean, honestly, I have somebody who's had chickens since I've lived here for 2 years. They're 3 houses down. I didn't even know they had them. They're not loud. You don't know they're there. you can hear a dog barking, you know, several blocks away. You can hear loud trucks, motorcycles, neighbors' kids screaming and playing. The decibels of a chicken is 60, which is like probably equates to me talking to you right now. A dog is 90. I don't need permission to get a dog. I just need to get my license. I don't need permission to have a loud truck. I certainly hear things in my neighborhood, and I share that neighborhood with a few of you here that are on the board. And I mean, I don't think any of you have heard my chickens yet. So I just don't think there's a reasonable reason to not allow us to have them. You know, if the property owner is doing what they're supposed to, they're following your rules to keep the spacing between the properties. They're cleaning them like they should. Any normal person should clean up after their animals. There's really no reason to ban that. You know, if somebody's gonna pay you guys money to do this, and I would pay up to $50 to keep my chickens a year and you'd make more money. You know, they're gonna take care of them and they're gonna want to be able to keep them. And I don't know if you guys have gotten complaints about the people who've had them already, but I feel like, I mean, like I said, I didn't even know my neighbors had them. So if those are the types of concerns people have, I mean, I just think they're a little uneducated about, you know, animal husbandry and how that works. My neighbor that approved me is a farm animal teacher. She has a master's in agriculture and farm animals, and she had no problem with approving me, you know. I think it makes more sense to get rid of that neighbor signature than it does to ban the chickens.
Thank you
All
very much.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the second letter that we have is Leo Bartels here. All right, at this time, I am going to open up the floor for anybody that would want to talk on this subject. So, Mr. McNeary, are you present? Would you like to say some words?
Mike McNerney, 702 Emmer Avenue. I've spoken to a couple of you about this issue. I'm here for support. I also have chickens. I've had them for a little over a year. And I followed the ordinance, hadn't had any issues. I've done the signatures. Luckily, I have neighbors I get along with. I can see it both ways, not having to get signatures if you have a problem with your neighbors. But fortunately, you know, I get along with them. We've had any issues with them. Like you said, it's kind of part of the family. Our kids named them. You know, they kind of take care of them. They have responsibility of taking care of them, and they kind of see where some of their food comes from. I think that's kind of important. I'm, you know, a small part of that, but yeah, I don't think there's a big issue. They're pretty quiet, and I get, like I said, a dog barking, a truck going by. We clean our coop once a week, you know, more if needed, but we keep it clean so it's not a smell. Kind of let them free range in our fenced in yard and, you know, not cause any issues. So when I heard that they're going to get rid of them, I was kind of, I guess, surprised by that, a little bit shocked. Because when I was working for the marshals, we never had any issues with complaints about chickens. And let's talk about enforcement. I think it's probably a building inspector issue more than having law enforcement go over there. That kind of upsets people a little bit, having law enforcement show up or something like that. So maybe if there's an issue, have the building inspector kind of look into it. Like I said, the signatures, I go both ways. I can see not having to have them, you know, it's your property, but like I said, I have good neighbors and I try and respect their wishes as well. So I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, I support allowing us to keep chickens. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Todd Miller.
Todd Miller, 704 and 710 A and B. So I have the two properties adjoining Mike's to the west. He has had them for a little over a year. Haven't heard them, haven't smelled them. Once in a while I see him through the fence, but he does have a 6-foot fence around the property. I've had no issues with them. I grew up rural out on Belgium Coal Road. My grandmother had 300 or 400 free range chickens in summer. I know how much noise a big flock can make, but those 6 chickens, I just never hear them. So if there are issues, I think with individual permits, they can be addressed one-on-one, but certainly just to come back with a blanket policy and say no more chickens is kind of like saying, if there's a dog at large, we're just not going to allow any more dogs. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, again, I'm gonna butcher names here. Sherry?
It's McLaughlin.
McLaughlin, thank you.
My name is Sherry McLaughlin. I'm at 221 Fillmore Street, and we live just south of Mike here. We had no idea he had chickens until he came over with half a dozen. So we were ecstatic. I was ecstatic. I was raised with chickens that honestly, my sister and friends, if my mom couldn't find us, we were in the coop. I'm here because I've been trying to wear him down to let me have chickens. I also want to make a side note. I work at a nursing home in Sheboygan and we have chickens. And we're in the city of in the city of Sheboygan with these chickens. I know there's an assisted living here. I don't know their status, if they have chickens or anything. But it is, if you want, I could get the papers for you and show you, but chickens with the elderly in nursing homes is becoming a new thing. That's shown to reduce antidepressants, medication, antipsychotics. It helps with the well-being. I actually take my mother's chickens, and she lives down in Washington County, and I take them to a nursing home that I used to work at because it is a life enrichment. They are friendly. They do have personalities. The one that I would take to the nursing home recently passed. That upset me. Just a beautiful little chicken, but like Mike was saying, the kids name them, and it is a experience for the kids. I know someone up the road doesn't have ducks. I don't hear her ducks. I don't hear Mike's. And Mike can attest to this. I sit outside because I'm a smoker and I smoke outside. I don't smoke in my house. He sees me out there a lot. I hear more of the coyotes than I hear of any of the chickens or the ducks in the area.
Do they attract coyotes?
Not really. I mean, you haven't had them in a cage. They may come around and sneak, but if you don't, we've never had problems with growing up and all that with coyotes. It would be raccoons that we would have issues. And that would be if they were able to get in the coop. But coops that would be like in town or whatever are pretty much enclosed. These aren't free-range chickens. I also want to add a note. If like Mike, these are beautiful fits, because I was chickens running around in the area. They get a lot of ticks. And my concern is too, the ticks. We have a lot of here in town and that will bring a lot of ticks. They clean up a lot of insects. They're great. They're actually real important for us for your gardens.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, Justina, did you want to say anything further? Okay, excellent. Yep. All right, Patrick, are you here?
Patrick Brown, I live on Fox Glen Road. They were right behind me, had put up their chicken coop, I want to say, almost a year before she came over to look for chickens, because she gasped about it once before. I came checking for them, and I came to the courthouse to check, see if she had permits or whatnot yet, and hadn't filed yet. I noticed that the chickens showed up before the permit came in. I watch the chicken, I don't see the chickens, I hear them in the morning, they let the dog out, but not much. What I do see is a lot of the construction stuff that goes within the yard, it's from when they built the fences, built their coop and stuff, it's still all through their yard. I'm worried because I do have dogs that have a Great Dane, and I do have a small one, and if they get a whole whiff of that stuff, it's critical for them to go over there, even just going at like that way. I'm worried because I have my dogs, I'm sort of having chickens that close to them. I'm sure they're not gonna attack anything, but you never know what dogs are gonna do if you smell a wild bird or something, another bird in the area. Yeah, that's all like the idea. I did sign the paperwork, but I signed the paperwork when I was off for knee surgery, and when they came to the door, I was fighting my Great Dane, holding my other dog in my hand, and I really didn't know what she was talking about. She did something about chickens and signed my name, I just they talked to me, that was all, and said sign for approval and whatnot, so that was about it. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ben and Michaela.
My name is Ben Owan. I am at 146 Fox Glen, right next to Pat and Dorothy. I was the one that did not sign. That refused to sign the paperwork. Reason being is not only I think that the group was built way beforehand. Now let's back up. I don't mind the way things are written right now. I don't mind people having chickens if everybody around them agrees, but if somebody doesn't agree, then obviously the preference. I like the way it's written. I'm not saying you can't have chickens. I'm just saying that everybody around them should have to agree. Now, my house is probably closer to this chicken coop than it is to anybody else. And my daughter, all winter long and all spring long, no, the windows open, heard these chickens every morning. We've been out in our backyard on our porch recording, and they were. And I think some of that has been shared with you. Now, again, I'm not saying that nobody can have it in town. I just like the way the rule is written, and then not everybody agrees. Fine. Now, people are talking about barking dogs. Oh, guess what? You can grab our dogs and bring them in the house and yell. Kids, you know, like kids, if they're being too loud after. This is happening early in the morning, late at night. I'm thinking all summer long, we're gonna be sitting in the backyard and listening to chickens, and they are. I'm not kidding, we have recordings from our yard, by our door, and it's very low. 2 weeks ago, we were cleaning up in the backyard, and the stench was terrible. The wind was blowing right into our house. What else? Coyotes. Somebody mentioned coyotes. Not in the last 2 weeks, but weeks before that, I've seen 3 on the corner of, and is that in Marl? Partridge and Foxglove. Where that open field is on the side over there. 2 were right by the neighbor's house one morning on my way to work, and then one was actually coming up towards Pat and North's house. So all their lights in the car and took off back to that. Now, up until just recently, I've never seen a coyote. Now, again, we have dogs all over the area. The last thing we want is wild animals tangling with dogs that are outside. We can control our dogs, everybody controls their dogs. But when wild animals come in, especially coons and coyotes, that's something you don't want to. But again, I don't say that nobody can have a chicken. I just like the way the rule is written. If everybody agrees, then fine. If everybody gets along, great. In my case, annoying, frustrating, and I see more issues that are gonna happening. Especially with this coop, because it's not fenced in, it's actually just plastic that is stable. Like anything can go right through this plastic and just flash around again. I don't think that's very secure, and it could probably be an potential problem issue, especially a branch tree or dog.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Neil Guterman.
And Neil Guterman, and I live next to Kayla. And I do hear the chickens, and they can be at times very loud. I am not border the property. Okay, but I'm within the vicinity. One of my biggest concerns is with the summer months in the area that we are at. Within the summer months. Will it or can it drag in for predators? I don't know that. The other question I have is, in the village of Fredonia, I'm a 30-year plus person in this village. Okay, my question is, when was the opportunity to raise chickens come into play? Was it recent? Was it past? And what were the rules and regulations at that time versus to what we have today? I would want them to figure out.
So I'll respond. I don't know when the ordinance was written. I mean, we can take a look at that, but it's certainly been on the books since before I was here. So I can't speak to this 6 years, at least 6 or 7 years. I mean, we can get that information for you and let you know.
I would appreciate
We
it.
can definitely do that.
The second thought I have is, in the event that predators are brought into the area where we are living at, what is the village commitment to keep them out. If in fact they are brought in by the area that we live in. I'm not saying that the other people that spoke about the chickens have this issue. But concern from me and my neighbors, even those kids. What do we do to prevent it? If that does materialize. Right. That is a concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. That, I think that everybody's had a chance to speak so far, unless Blake, you wanted to say anything regarding chickens? No? All right. Okay. So. Want to go for these? So I guess as part of number 6 then is the discussion and possible action regarding chicken permitting process and the ordinance change. Again, Chris had mentioned that we have 2 options in our packet before us that we could theoretically change ordinances to, or if neither is adopted, it stays the same. So in the interest of discussion, is there anybody that would like to? Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, the first ordinance or ordinance A, whatever, the language in C subparent 1 should also be deleted from the word upon notification altogether that sentence. And that would read 6, up to 6 chickens may be raised within a lot zone, single family residential or 2-family residential, period. That would give them, with upon notification of all abutting property owners, it's more than 2. That was necessary. Thank you. And I would, what was the address? What was your address? 125.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay. There's an extensive amount of environmental corridor. It's not primary, but it's environmental corridor up in, where you have deer running through backyards and stuff like that. Where the creek, through water goes through and whatever. It wouldn't probably be entirely chickens that are drawing the animals that may be a normal passing for those in the trees and the brush and whatever. They've seen that would be normal. Just as a matter of cause. And with respect to the plastic walls of the chicken coop, that would be something that would be up to the building inspector to see if the coop conforms with the ordinance. One of the reasons I was on the board, as a matter of fact, I was one of the chief pushers of getting this ordinance in place. I think it was closer to 10 years ago. Is that we're willing to trust our residents that if they can build according to an ordinance and keep the place clean and build it right and this and that and not have roosters and whatever, live up to their responsibility, they should be able to do that. And up until tonight, this is the first time I heard that we've had problems with something. If you have a problem with, you should call the office here and address that problem, and then we would send whoever it is out there to check up on it. Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Don, you just mentioned that there was an issue which we should be talking to our office. What is the purpose of all these? Well, the office, the people in the office are in charge of carrying out the policy that the board creates. And the chicken ordinance was a policy that the board created. And it's the building inspectors and the village administrator and the police and whatever are informed, are the people that will carry out the policy and make sure that it's being upheld. We as trustees are involved in doing that. enforcing like the laws and the rules and stuff.
Who does?
The specialists, the police department, the administrator,
Cop going over there.
building inspector, and whatever.
But to Don's point, I mean, we are here to make the policy and to change policy as necessary. We aren't the ones that go out and actually enforce the policy. So again, you know, this whole issue is brought up because people weren't pulling their permits, right? And that's how we kind of came to be here. So the fact that we found out that people aren't pulling their permits and, you know, now we've got an influx of them, right? Great, that's awesome, but if there's an issue with another one, we're here talking about that now to figure out if we should amend the ordinance. I mean, we're going 10,000 feet here. Should we amend the ordinance? Should we keep the same ordinance we have and enforce it further? Should we increase, you know, different things like that? So that's kind of why we're here at the moment. Go ahead, Michaela.
So when you say pulling the permits. With our particular neighbor.
Mm.
Did they get a permit prior to them coming around and asking for our signatures? And if so, would they then be grandfathered in and still be able to have these certificates? Because to me, then that would be on the village, right? Because then it's not actually following the process that's been put in place and has worked for years. There's not been an issue. And so now, I don't care if you want a chicken, you have chickens.
Mhm.
But we're the ones that didn't sign off on it due to the reasons we stated. So I guess that's my biggest concern is. Do my neighbors have a permit, were they granted a permit prior to actually following the process?
So I was just gonna answer procedurally, they should have gotten signatures from all the abutting neighbors. And then by turning it in with all those signatures, then they would have been granted a permit.
So they technically don't have a permit then. We didn't sign.
Not a valid.
Right, it's not. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not valid.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay,
Well, unless they had chickens before this ordinance went into effect.
no.
I don't know what the dates on that stuff is.
I'm just gonna remind the board again, that while we'll answer questions, this is a conversation mostly between us, so. Bruce, what can I?
Yeah, as far as the notification of neighbors and stuff like that, I mean, I think amending this ordinance that we might have coop standards, fence requirements, things like that. The signatures are nice, just like a group home where you would notify people within 1,500 feet, but are you talking adjacent neighbors, neighbors within 1,500 feet and stuff like that? There's a lot of things in this ordinance that isn't addressed. But I'm not against it, I'm not for it, just think it should be common understanding,
Right.
you know.
So if you look through the ordinance, a lot of those things are,
Look at H.
yeah, if you look at H and then sanitation on J, and then there are some things that are pointed out there. But I agree. I mean, either way, whatever we end up doing with this, I think the biggest thing for me personally is the enforcement of it, right?
Yeah,
And-
stepping it up a little bit.
Right, and I think that the other thing that I would consider and hope, and hopefully somebody would agree with me on this is. There are people in this village that have chickens that don't have permits. We know that, right? So if we're going to start enforcing something. We have to have stricter fines for not pulling their permits as well, because. To the general public's comment. When you pay for something, and you have to pay for something and upkeep it. Generally, you're gonna do that, and if not, then it becomes an issue. Here, and we have to enforce that issue,
Correct.
so.
We, again, we don't enforce our policy, so none of us are gonna go and look through everybody's backyard to see if there's a chicken. You probably should have called the cops or called the village hall or called somebody in charge of something to report, well, there's a substandard condition in our backyard, and somebody should come and look at it. And we would have done that, send the proper person and work to solve the problem. Rather, it's not our intention that anyone should have to suffer over someone not following ordinances for any reason. Because we all should. As you're burning leaves in the backyard and stuff like that, you shouldn't have to suffer through that. You call the authorities or call the cops. The cops will send that complaint to the proper place and they can look at this. For everybody's, you know, that's how we handle them.
As far as as far as the predators and stuff like that, they got black bear going down in Kenosha and all over here, you know, it's not. Because there's chickens in Fredonia, you know. Not that that's a valid point, but I mean, there's always been coons around and. You know, there's fox all over in the back of the church over there and stuff like that, families and stuff like that. I'm a nature guy, you know, so we're not gonna get away from that kind of stuff. If we eliminate somebody having 6 chickens in their backyard, I don't believe that. I think enforcement, I think better enforcement on our original ordinance would be something to look on.
If I may, Mr. President. So when this topic came up the first time, first of all, thank you everyone for coming. It's nice to kind of hear on both sides of the issue and try and make a decision here. Me personally, I don't think we're gonna get rid of chickens, but it's just finding a way again to better enforce it. So I did some looking around at what other communities have done. And I'm hoping here, out of my personal opinion, out of all the other municipalities I looked around, to me, West Bend seemed to have the best ordinance for handling this, and Chris used to be the mayor of West Bend. Maybe you can kind of fill it in, because I thought that was a really well-structured ordinance that I think from enforcement to how a coop is inspected, how it's approved. I think adopting something like that, I think would be more beneficial to fit our needs here in terms of all around what everyone's talking about.
Sure, I wasn't prepared to speak on that, so I apologize. But if that's a task that you would want me to look into to kind of mesh their ordinance to ours, we.
But that's what, I mean, basically, that was the concept. You pay, you have to go through a permitting process, you have to have a coop inspected and approved. And then if there are any issues, I think it was a police follow-up.
Yeah, so there's a building process for the coop itself, which again, I would advocate for your ordinance as well. So it's an accessory structure, right? It goes through building permit review and all that. And then the chickens themselves are licensed, so it's per chicken, just like you would for cats and dogs, at least in the city. Each of the chickens are getting licensed too. There's a maximum of 4 hens in the city of West Bend. But you're right, under the building side, the building inspector has the authority, right, to make those decisions. And then on the chicken side of enforcement, it would be the police and marshal.
And then no signatures required.
Correct, yeah, make that signatures.
I mean, I still believe that if there is a nuisance, someone should be called so that we can look into that if it's a nuisance. I mean, I don't know, it's a tough subject as far as, like I said, with the predators go. I don't disagree. I really don't, but there's gonna be predators that are gonna come in. I mean, we're on the edge of a rural area.
In the event. Predator within our area. And pull out a pistol and shoot it without any repercussions in the village, we're shooting a firefighter. Yes.
Sir, with all the respect, are we still in public comment or are we?
We are deliberating here.
So I don't disagree, but that's something we're gonna have to talk about. Like I said, I think we're closed public comment here. We're having deliberation. So we're not taking any questions at the moment right now.
I doubt if you'd be able to get fire off a shot in your backyard without consequences, even if it's a friendly.
If it's attacking something like your dog or something like that, or whatever, I don't know, I don't wanna get involved in that either,
So,
right now.
so in the interest of time, and everybody can still say their piece, I'm fine with that. There was a question whether or not our administrator should look into his ordinance that they had in West Bend. And maybe we could take some things from it. Is the board prepared? Do they want to move forward on this tonight? Do we want to take a vote on either of these options? Or do we want more time and more clarification on what we should do?
We're gonna have to go through the whole thing again.
Well, then it would be done right, I guess.
Well, I mean, we already have in this ordinance, the power of inspection, where it says the village shall have the power. Whenever deemed reasonably necessary to enter the building structure, et cetera, et cetera. Village marshal may issue compliance orders and citations, et cetera. Enforcement, the village shall revoke the permit to keep chickens in the event that the village marshal has issued 3 or more violations of this chapter within any 6-month period. We have inspection and enforcement in place already.
Right.
Which is what I heard you talking about the West Bend. So I mean, I don't know if there's a need for more research. Just to do something we've already got. Written in front of
No,
us.
I agree, but I think it'd be nice to have something where, I thought Justina's letter, I thought it was very well done personally. I read through that, very informational. I even like the fees that you had laid out here. Makes sense to me. I mean, something like that where you pay a fee, you gotta bring it in, get it approval. And then go through the process from there. I think that needs to be added on top of the first, but I agree with you. I mean, we're pretty much there, just a few little details.
Sure.
And I agree with her assessment of that, if someone's paying $50 for this permit, they're gonna respect it a lot more than somebody who gets it for free or doesn't, go by it. As far as predators go, we already have predators. I have large dogs. I had 2 large dogs. I got 1 now. And I've still seen coyotes in adjacent properties. They don't come near my property, but they go around it. I've seen fox, I've seen raccoon, I mean, I've seen just about everything. This is a rural village. You're gonna have just about everything here. The quantities might fluctuate, but we can't all of a sudden say, oh, well, it's because of the chickens. Because we've already got them.
Bruce, you had something to?
There's not a standard on construction or anything of a chicken coop, is there, in this ordinance at all? So would that be an art board thing?
There
There's a
is, yeah,
standard
under
age coop design.
No.
But yeah, but it's structure wise,
What are you looking for as far as structure that's not there?
what type of material, and, you know, so it doesn't, so it's not plastic or it's not, you know.
All coops, including an attached coop enclosure, shall be enclosed with wire netting or equivalent materials that will prevent chickens from escaping the coop or the attached enclosure.
Kind of bag.
But trustee Pappy, to your point, I mean, they very well could, call in a complaint to our building inspector, and I would argue that, yep, he could go out and check it out. He could see the plastic or whatever is there, and he could argue that it's not an equivalent, material. And so it's
Okay.
not up to code.
All right. Don't, you know.
So something else, that I looked through with this too is, again, I mentioned this before, having a fine for not taking out a permit for the chickens. I think that would be appropriate. And the other thing I looked at is the amount of complaints, right? So currently it's 3 within 6 months. I would say, I would even entertain saying, possibly 3 in a year, right? So I mean, that because I don't know, just make it so that people are, if they're gonna have these animals, they're gonna be responsible with them, right? So,
And we send police to homes where it's township, and they go and talk to the dog owner and the.
and I'm sure that the majority of chicken owners are just awesome and that, they take care of them and everything else, but when it becomes a problem, it can become a problem. So.
I'm prepared to make a motion. If that was submitted.
That would be in order.
Okay.
Tiffany, do you have any?
There's been a lot of information thrown around. I would. My thought is if you're gonna enforce this and do the coop design, I think it should be taken a little bit further and even look at requiring fences. You know, with all the animals that we do have running around, and as important as chickens are to people, and they are their pets and they are their families. If it's my dog and I know my dog runs out of the yard, or my chickens are free range in my yard, I'd want to protect them and keep them enclosed. And if I want free range them in my yard, then I want to have them fenced in. So maybe that's something that we add to this ordinance, that they're required to include a fence too.
They shall keep or maintain chickens within a coop or attached coop enclosed at all times. So they shouldn't be free run, that you do that at your own risk.
Well, they shouldn't
Of
be free
losing
running.
your chickens or losing your permit because they shouldn't be run free. Another question.
We're closed at the moment.
Is there another motion?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's ready to do something, go ahead.
All right, I will make a motion that we retain the ordinance as is, with the exception of deleting the language in C1 as described, and also deleting the language in E2 and E3 in their entirety, and to raise the annual fee from $15 to $25.
You say that again about C1?
It was what you.
E1,
Because we're getting rid of the abutting property owners language, so that makes it.
yeah, E2 and E3, that's the language that refers to notifying abutting properties. And C1 is the last part of that sentence that contains upon notification of all abutting property owners. That's the one that was missed, that wasn't mine.
Yep. I have a motion on that, if anybody is interested in a second. Just keep in mind, we all still have to vote.
So it's just one, and then there, and going up. And then increasing 15 to 25. Yep.
So then about this, these are staying the same, and that's.
Yeah, well, this would be 5 and 2 and 3, yeah, so these are the same. So it's just those two getting removed, and then C1, this little language here. Just the language. So anything about abutting properties. And then the fee would go from 15 to 25. It might not be in the ordinance, it might just be in your fee schedules.
It's a fee schedule.
I don't like the idea of the cops going out there. I mean, enforcement that way. I mean, we have limited resources for a police department. I think the building inspector is more apt to have better control of that. Knowing.
Just more than having the marshal law.
Well, I think either way, it's not saying the marshal or whatever, it's saying that it'll be.
Just saying who's qualified to look at it, you know, and, you know, give them a heads up, stuff like that.
Being a former police officer, I would have to say, we're not equipped to judge things like that either. I think that's something that's more, for a building inspector or other type of, village official.
Then enforce it with the fines, yeah.
I think it's just not a, personally, I don't believe that's a cop's job to do that.
No, there's nothing in here, in the inspection portion, it just says the village shall have power to enter the structure. It doesn't
Okay.
necessarily say the marshal has to enter the
Okay.
structure. The marshal would issue the citation.
I thought there were people that are indicating that they wanted that though. And,
Would be two places.
That would be a staff decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would.
So, yeah, just to again reiterate, we have a motion on the floor. If we wanted this.
Can I get clarification on something first before that, the penalty here on What is this here? An M, underneath M, it says for some per day set forth by the village schedule of forfeitures, what is that amount?
I can look it up if you really want to know.
Please look, that'd be great.
1 second.
I don't really think it's about fines and penalties. This isn't about fines and penalties. It's about, people that want to have chickens and,
I just think we should do it the right way if we're gonna do it.
Right.
That's my, so we're not coming back and. Who would have thought that chickens were such a hot button issue?
Can we add to your motion?
Yep.
Can I add to your motion?
This is, I don't know, probably the second biggest crowd I've seen in my time here.
yeah, it's a shame, actually.
Yeah, this would be one of the only ordinances that is a listed use in a district where you have to ask your neighbor's permission to engage in a listed use on your property. It just doesn't conform to the rest of the ordinance in that respect. I agree with that.
Tiffany, were you looking to possibly amend that?
Yeah, with what you talked about with the number of complaints, changing it from 3 and 6 months to 3 in a year.
Don, would you be okay with that, amending your motion?
Sure, I'll accept that.
All right.
Just waiting on.
Yep.
Get a clarification, so you want to. In an ordinance, you want to. You don't want to have them get the signatures and what? Is that what you're saying? Amended?
Effectively, yes.
You want to leave it in place with
More neighbors.
So you want removing the signature requirement from the ordinance.
All right, so it looks like you would fall under the general bond schedule. Your general bond schedule is first, second, and third offense. So your first offense is $250. Your second offense is $347.10. And your third offense would be $495.70.
That's a lot of dozen
And
eggs.
again, these are all citations that would run, they would all run through our local municipal court.
That would satisfy me, so I'll go ahead and I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion that any one of the members has?
Can I get some clarification because I stepped out? So
Absolutely.
I heard trustee Bartz, you made an amendment.
Yes, in L and E for in enforcement of changing it to any issues or violations more than 3 in any 6-month period, changing it to a year.
Okay. And then trustee, second. Okay.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm gonna call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you want to stay, you can. If you want to leave, by all means, you can do that as well. Absolutely.
And it follow up. 10 foot. Sits right next to this.
Absolutely. I think that needs to. Well, that was fun.
Well, at least it was fully delivered.
Yeah.
And that's actually good. So, keep it in order.
Thanks for the help too, appreciate it. Should we take a couple minutes and wait for Bruce, or should we keep rolling?
Doing reports.
All right, reports on the village committees, Parks and Rec Committee. What did you do? What did we talk about?
We talked about a lot of stuff. We had a very busy meeting last week. Thank you, Administrator Jenkins, for all your assistance on that. We talked about the budget review, just kind of going over what we have in the parks budget. We did come to the decision that because we didn't have any applicants for a park leader, or Parks Director position, that we are not gonna allow or offer the Park and Rec program this summer. Unfortunately, I did see Administrator Jenkins put something out on social media today, so thank you for that. We also talked about the upcoming Mud Run event, which I think is really starting to take some traction, so super stoked and excited about that. We do have our next movie in the park, which is really in the Fine Arts Center on Friday. If anybody's interested, come see Encanto in the Fine Arts Center. It's free. We've got a good setup. Met with them yesterday. We talked about the pay for play disc golf program. We're looking into more ideas on being able to accept funds electronically, generate some more revenue. We are going to continue looking at the community garden initiative and carry that on and hopefully launch that next year. And then we also approved the electrical upgrades at Fireman's Park, mainly for the 100th anniversary this summer. But it also opened up to allow us to do more events at Fireman's Park and bigger events like Fun Before the 4th and so on. And then we also talked about raising fees for the use of additional parks, Marie Krause and Freedom. And then new things that we are working on is working with the girls basketball club to possibly upgrade some of our basketball courts in the village. So lots of stuff happening.
So thank you. Any questions of trustee Bartz? We'll move on to the joint EMS programs.
Yes.
Yeah, Don, would you like to update us on the joint EMS?
The joining us, I was there with our fire chief and we spoke about a number of different things. We pretty much have the ambulance well on the way and some of those characteristics pretty much cemented in and agreed to. We're looking at starting to talk on doing the same thing with the fire department, with the fire end of the spectrum. And decided that we would leave the different departments and municipalities think it over and bring stuff up and talk about it among themselves, and we all come back together after the summer and start working as a group again, using that information.
Excellent. Any questions? Trustee Dort? We'll move on to the finance committee.
Yep, finance met, like I said, everything's in your packet there. We did approve funds to be used for a 1-ton truck. And we also approved not paying, I guess there's an ordinance, or we don't have an ordinance, but not paying citizen board members for their time on the board, and that's going to phase out this October.
Any questions of trustee Haas? All right, we'll move on to the architectural control board. Oh, that's right, I chaired this one, didn't I? That was a while ago. Okay. April 19th, we had a meeting mainly to discuss the siding that was, I believe, going on the Precision Floor and Decor building located at 200 Highland Drive. We talked about the samples and the materials that they submitted, and ultimately we decided that what they submitted was fine and approved it as is. And then we did look at, we talked about the Dollar General. They had a couple trees on the berm that was abutting up to, I believe, is that Ansay's property? Yeah, abutting up to Ansay's property that Ansay had requested be taken down because of roots being exposed, and it wasn't an actionable item, but we said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. They're box elder trees, they suck anyway. So that was about it. So are there any questions? All right, excellent.
When is that building gonna be erected? They said by August?
Which one's that?
The Family Dollar one.
Oh,
Dollar General.
yeah, I want to say
End of this month.
they want to be open.
Yeah,
by the end of the month.
they're booking. Have you been by there? There's,
Yeah, the structure's there.
Yeah, and they're all the sides and everything, they're putting insulation.
This
in.
month. Very ambitious.
Yep, they are.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
I was reading about the Anderson Automotive
Mhm.
discussion. What's going on with that?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So we just talked in general about beautification awards for different places, and then we kind of got talking about Anderson Automotive and the fact that there are quite a few vehicles, boats, campers, trailers, race cars, all sorts of things that are kind of there. So we were deciding what any recourse that we could, that they could have for doing that. So that's kind of a future discussion item and to kind of research a little bit.
They're not kind of too soon on the awards given.
I probably,
you didn't know they were this month.
yeah, they were. All right. Anything else? Let's move on to items for discussion and action. I would entertain a motion to approve Quantum Mechanics Street Use Permit application, so we can discuss.
So moved.
Have a motion? Motion and a second. All right, any discussion? Or somebody could maybe fill us in on what's going on here.
Yeah, this business and the industrial park are asking to use the street for a car show. It was reviewed by all the department heads, everybody signed off on it, we're all okay with it. That's it, and it just requires your approval too.
All right,
Is there any concern about the date?
Say again?
It's Saturday. Are we concerned about that at all for a good chunk of time?
yeah.
That's actually.
For the most part.
So there was not concern just because it was during the weekend. If it was during the week, obviously with that being such a high traffic area during the work week, we would be, but that's okay.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. Buvett, I appreciate you waiting for the last hour or so, but we are at a point where I would like to appoint Blake Buvett to the Plan Commission vacancy, this term ending in 2026. Mr. Buvett, do you want to say a few words about yourself, kind of introduce yourself to the board? Sure, why don't you? That'd be good.
And you don't have to hide that there.
Yeah, we're friendly. And
My name is Blake Buvett, 468 North Milwaukee Street. My wife, my young son, who's now going to be 1 in 2 days, and I've been living on there for about 1.5 years now. My background is actually in mechanical engineering. I work at here actually at Aquamaster. It's in kind of rural field area. Been there for about 10 years now. So ironically, being a mechanical engineer, I do about 80% of my work's electrical. So I am a little well-rounded in that area, but I'm looking forward to converting this. Any questions for me? I guess is one of them here.
I was trying to think of something smart.
yeah, you should.
What are you doing here?
Why do you want to? All right, I got a motion to approve. I got 3 seconds, so who wants to take it? Rick can take it. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the planning commission.
Welcome.
You poor. All right.
We're stuck until 20.
All right, for this next item, this is kind of gonna be an interesting one, but I would entertain a motion to reject received bids for contract 2023-1 for the storm sewer. And then we could discuss.
I'll make a motion to reject.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the second discussion. That's pretty damn expensive. Can you put that in the notes?
Yeah, well, I could take it away, but I think that was summed up pretty well. We went into the 2023 budget with $75,000 in the line item for this project. We took it out to RFP, and RFP was marketed out to multiple contractors. We had 4 interested parties look at the project. 3 of them actually came on site to look at options, and then in the end, only 1 proposal was submitted, and that's the one that's before you from Visu Sewer. I'm very positive they would do a great job. But the fact that it came in at $193,720 makes me pause. You actually have kind of two options here. So while it wasn't official, you do have the option that if you rejected this bid, upon you rejecting the bid, we could then go to the county and ask for them to bid afterwards. The county, though, we already got a rough estimate, it's about $120,000. So with both of those numbers in mind, my preference would be that you reject this bid altogether. We save this $75,000 that we had set aside, roll it into next year, and then this can be a project that we consider with both that money and new money in 2024. And whatever shape that will look like.
It should be done in conjunction with the rebuild of cell phone.
Yeah, that's it.
Which should be coming up on the schedule pretty soon. It's all starting to break up in the middle of something.
I don't know if it's next year though.
The whole bunch of them breaking up.
Yeah,
But
that's a whole other conversation.
Right, so no, my only question with that was, now, this was a while ago, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we say that that needed to be fixed like ASAP?
I thought that's what Eric said. I was just gonna say what was the downfall of holding off on this until next year. So I'd
Right.
take money out of it, but
Mhm.
what's gonna do to the system?
Well,
we
we
don't do
also
this.
talked
There
about
might be some-
not having to be there, just putting in a culvert.
Yeah, there'll be a country culvert, box culvert.
Hmm.
You know,
So I guess is what I'm asking is, maybe
what was the county's bid?
Like 125.
Yeah, so,
25?
right, so my question more so is, can we wait till next spring to do this?
So I think we all know our DPW director well enough to know that if he felt it was an emergency, he would tell us and would not be afraid to tell you to spend the money. So he actually is comfortable waiting. He understands the cost impact too. So they would do whatever patches, right, that need to be done. And yes, there's always a risk throughout the year, but knock on wood, it could survive until next year.
I don't know if this is. good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What like?
Sorry, I'm getting a little punchy here. Okay, so is there any other discussion? We won't have any other discussion on this?
So then next year, we would just do the rebidding process all over again, and,
Correct, budget more money for
Yeah.
next year to do it.
okay.
And timing is important too. I mean, I know we have a couple new members here, but ideally, all these kind of contracting things, we would probably bid it out like October, November time. When contractors are hungry for work for projects for the next year, right?
Are we confident we could probably get it lower than 120,000?
Nope,
No.
I'm not confident. But we
So it would
will
be
have the money.
better
to do
budgeted
that.
next
Yeah,
year.
I'm gonna say, we'd be prepared for that number.
Okay.
Come on, Josh.
The possibility we might do that project in two halves. The part that's under the road and the part that goes under the lot and empties at the park,
Well, either way.
so.
All right, any other questions, concerns? All right, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to reject the bids. All right. Next, we have a motion to approve paramedic vehicle and defibrillator unit. For a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
All right, I have a motion.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
That vehicle that's pictured there is no longer available. We still have two more that are there.
The
Couple
cheaper,
miles on them, but $1,000.
wait, double miles,
Just the difference, but
double miles with $1,000 less? Oh,
And about 30,000.
30,000 miles on them, yes.
That's not that, that's
No.
We're both 2020s,
Yeah.
and they're 34.9. What they was there.
And this is from Ozaki County funds.
This will be reimbursed by the Zucker County process.
Move to approve the purchase.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any other questions on it? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are past chickens. Keep going.
You wanna go back?
Thank God.
It's rock and roll. All right, next we have a motion to approve resolution 2023 G. Reallocating 2023 budget line items Q1. Get a motion for that.
How did we get this far off? When even wild estimates should have brought us closer to this.
This is the
I can explain more in a minute.
Yeah, I'm looking for a motion so we can start the discussion, if that works. Do we want to discuss and then we can? Sure, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. So you guys knew this was coming. I had mentioned that every quarter, really, I would like to do these types of corrections. So you guys approved the 2023 budget. Since that, a couple things have happened. You guys approved our new wage structure, which was implemented throughout, which shuffled some monies around. We originally had budgeted the majority of our items in the general fund. We've since sprinkled things out amongst the water and sewer and fire funds. So a good example was previously your AEMS position or AEMT was in the general fund. She's obviously an employee of the fire department, so she should be in the fire fund, right? So things like that have been moved, and that's why, maybe to answer Trustee Dorward's question, that's why some of the numbers seem so large. It's because we're doing those payroll corrections, moving people into the right funds. So starting on the memo here on the general fund side, you see that we budgeted conservatively in our construction and building permits. We have been getting a significant amount of those, especially with what is called the wire boring along the right of way. So that income that we're seeing with fiber getting installed and all that is just uptick that we weren't aware of. So we're capturing that revenue there. You guys know all about the interest. So we originally budgeted 2,000. We switched our funds over to LGIP. Actually, as of today, I had Melissa run the numbers. We're actually at $24,000 of interest. So this, me requesting it to go to 15 really should be, you know, a closer number to maybe 25. That shows more interest there. Miscellaneous income, we're using this more often now as a catch-all. A good example is whatever the town pays the village back for utilities and things like that, we're capturing that income there. So in all, it's a general fund income increase of 67,000. Then on the expense side of the general fund, you see a lot of this are payroll items. A good example would be like the general fund insurance. The drop there is not because we're saving money on insurance, but because some costs are getting moved to our other funds. Same thing with WRS, same thing with Social Security, Medicare, and all that. The utilities that you see listed here, we originally budgeted just for the village's portion. Now we're recognizing that we're going to pay both the village and the town side on the expense side, right? And then get reimbursed from the town on the miscellaneous income side. So that runs through that. You see the capital projects getting reflected to what was approved in finance. Fire department, we really challenged the fire department to find some savings within their budget. The chief and I met on that, which he was thrilled to do. And so you'll see that there's less of a burden on the general fund there as well. And then finally, we did dip into contingency a little bit in order to make all these accounts kind of balanced, and that's what you see reflected there. So that's the general fund. Any question on the general fund before I go to the next page? All right. Next up on the CIP fund, again, these were just changed to reflect what was approved in finance. Under fire, you see a recognition of the ambulance revenues. So again, we budgeted pretty conservatively on the revenues for the ambulance. We're already seeing an uptick on those fees, which is great. So we budgeted accordingly to capture those revenues. On the expense side, again, you see a move of payroll things for the AEMT and other Social Security, Medicare costs, salaries and things like that. But again, aren't new costs, but they're moved from the general fund to fire. Under water, we're capturing a little bit more fees on the industrial fees side. On the expense, we broke up. If you remember in the original budget for both water and sewer, we packed all that money into supplies as what kind of like a catch-all. Eric's preference was to split it out amongst like chemicals and the specific supplies themselves. That's why you see that sprinkled out there. We're using, let's see, we're no longer transferring money to the general fund. That's a big change here too. If you remember in the original budget, We had all those costs in the general fund, and then both the water and the sewer fund were sending money to the general fund to pay for those things. Now that we're moving it back to the appropriate funds, we no longer need to transfer the dollars from water and sewer. And let's see. Some adjustments for capital projects, again, with what finance approved, a good example of the sewer utility expense. We originally had $10,000 in there in capital because of the one project we were doing. Now that we're doing a little bit more, that got shifted over there too. I think that is it. And yes, it's a big list, but so a lot of review with Melissa, and so I give her a lot of credit. I don't know if she's still on. You did a good job. A lot of work was put into this, so this will then realign our budget. So that way, when we print out the report in 2 weeks, you're gonna see those numbers kind of get reflected there. And so every quarter, I hope that we kind of revisit this. That way, every quarter, we're more closer to our budget actuals each time.
And I do want to thank you too, because I came in twice, I think it was last week or the week before, and he was literally going through line by line, each account number, making sure everything was kind of up to par. I think this is a big one, right? Going back and forth with the first time that he's doing this, but I think. No, right. And what I'm saying by that is I think that the first time it's going to be larger because this really was, if you remember last year, Melissa's first budget. And we had Chris doing it, right? So literally not a lot of history between the two of them for the whole village. So I do think that, they're working hard to get it to where it needs to be. I do look forward to seeing this be much less of a process next quarter. I'm sure you do too. But I do want to say thank you to both you and Melissa for sitting down and doing this and making this a priority.
Yeah, I think we should. It's a good idea. I think we should keep the sewer funds and water funds in their own departments. It gives the impression that we're Richard in a general fund. Does this allow us to have enough money to pay the wages for the labor for the rest of the year?
Yes, and that money always existed, right? It just was what fund it was looked into.
It was just scaring the heck out of me. But yeah, the budget that we were presented with last fall was kind of thin on details. And I'm usually more comfortable having too much detail rather than not enough. They're just the right amount of it. And we can do that when we get to that point.
Yep.
Okay.
That's already a discussion that
Mr.
Jenkins and I have had. Yep.
Yep, and treasury reports, are we gonna start seeing those soon?
Yep. And that's why I sent you guys that one email kind of to update on your balances, because I know that was asked.
I was actually just going to mention that, so I don't know if everybody got the email regarding the fund balances, the account balances. But there was one sent out listing the balances of all of our funds, so I encourage you to look at that. It was on Tuesday. So
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-G.
second. All right, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, and next we have a motion to approve amending ordinances 2023-3 pertaining to the composition of the Board of Review. So this kind of came out of the Board of Review training that we did this past week. That was just a ton of fun, and I enjoyed spending some time here, 3 hours of my evening on Tuesday or Monday, I think it was.
Was it 3 hours?
It was 3 hours.
50 minutes.
Yeah.
They must have remodeled that.
So basically, as we were watching this, and not falling asleep watching this, we thought you choked. We found that we have been in the past having every single board member as a member of the Board of Review. And what we found is that state ordinances that say that there's a requirement of 3 people to be on the Board of Review. One of them being the clerk and the president, and then the other one can be appointed. So what I did with this, and I asked Administrator Jenkins to do, is put the 3rd member on to be the president pro tem, sorry, Rick. And then have us discuss, or I'm hoping that somebody would volunteer to be an alternate for the Board of Review. should one of us not, or one of the other two not be able to make it. But this really just frees up some time for those people that, I mean, we really don't need to have all of us sit here for this, especially since normally we do absolutely nothing. And as far as I know, there was nobody that came in and talked to the assessor. this
Even the new
week.
trustees get to skip out on all this fun.
They do.
If you're on call, you get paid. Like if somebody.
You guys would get paid. Because it would be a meeting, and when you ran on the assumption of a certain amount of money per meeting and all that, so. This side would get paid, this side would not, because you're.
Understood.
So, does anybody want to volunteer to be a member of the Board of Review as an alternate?
Come on, Brian.
If not, I'm going to appoint somebody and ask us to vote.
Oh,
Oh, wait, I was.
You're already there.
Yeah.
I'll nominate Josh Haas.
Oh. All right,
I think you should probably approve G first and then you can go through the appointment process.
all right, that's a great idea. Thank you. Let's. So is everybody okay? Amending the ordinance?
Let's do G first.
Right, let's do G first.
I'm going to do G.
All right,
Second.
he's moving to do G. We're seconding moving G. I have a motion in a second. Is there any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we're going to select and appoint member to the, as an alternate. Nobody wants to,
We need this for next meeting, right?
we're going to
review it before the next board meeting.
do this after.
On the same
It's the
day,
20th, isn't it?
I think we start that at 6 and then the board meeting was at.
It's the 20. Oh, wait, I've got my days mixed up here.
It was 20.
I think it's the 12.
Next.
Next.
The 18th.
Yep, but I want to say that it's on the 15th or 16th, isn't it?
I'm double checking.
I think you did a Tuesday.
It's the 23rd,
Okay,
Tuesday, the 23rd.
so it is after the next board meeting.
Oh, okay.
Keep in mind. Probably not gonna have to be here because I can't not show up and I don't believe the clerk can, so it'd just be if this guy backs up.
You don't really want to do it. It's within 2 days of my birthday, so I expect cake.
I can make cake work.
If I bring you a cake, can I?
And keep in mind, anybody can come and hang out if they want.
All right,
Yes, let me put that on my calendar.
I'll
Yeah.
volunteer.
Tiffany's volunteering,
Yes,
you sure?
no, but I'll do it anyways.
We'll just hang out, it'll be fun.
That'll be fine.
All right,
An alternate has to show up?
no,
Oh, that's what I thought, okay.
but she can if she wants. Yeah, you really don't
I'm
have,
gonna bring Rick cake, so it'll be good.
yeah, you really don't have
Then we
to.
made it out. Yeah, see, that's one way to get everybody here.
Cake and a movie or what?
There you go, we'll watch Top Gun.
Oh, yeah.
Which one, the first
one or the second?
Second one.
Second one.
Cartoon.
Okay, we're getting a little off the rails
I think we
here.
need to ask, sorry, we need a motion to nominate.
Yes. All right, so we would need a motion to nominate Tiffany as the alternate to the Board of Review. And I think it'd be interesting. Can she nominate herself?
I don't know.
I'll nominate her. Motion to nominate trustee Tiffany Parks to the alternate for the board of review.
All right, I have a motion
I'll second it.
and I have a second.
May God have mercy on your soul.
Keep in mind, you get a vote on this.
You can vote nays.
You can't vote nay.
I got out of that.
All right. Yeah, of course you would, Josh. Way to go. All right, I have a motion in a second. Any questions? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Wow. It's impressive. Motion carries unanimously.
That was courageous.
Do we have? Do we have correspondence?
Somebody had to fall on the sword.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, I do have correspondence.
More chicken letters?
No, no more minutes. The next mid-marine meeting is going to be Wednesday, May 24th. For those who have not been on the board. Well, does everybody have a copy? Perfect. This is an opportunity for us to get together with different municipalities and rub shoulders, talk about what's going on. It's good. I've been there a couple of times. It's a good thing. We have a speaker, it's State Senator Dewey Strobel, so that'll be good. But it looks like it's at the community center.
Newburgh,
Are they like catering? Hmm.
Newburgh Community Center, right there.
Yeah, yeah, look at that. So anyway, I don't, this, The village pays for the cost of,
So the village would pay for you attending.
right?
It's the cost of the supervisor of the trustee.
Right.
If you care to bring. You can pay for the cost of your life. if you bring one.
I don't have a life.
I was gonna say, or husband, or significant.
I guess.
Thank God.
Or partner. Anyway,
That's what the word. I gotta get used to having a phone.
I know.
okay, so I just thought I'd bring that up. So we need reservations and by Friday, May 19th. So, but then again, hold on, hold the phone.
Sooner the better.
Sooner would be preferred, and it looks like May 15th is when we should have an RSVP in, so. Okay, so that's that. I don't believe I have any other correspondence. The only other thing I'd point out, like, I guess, is these cool books popped up. In the
Oh.
village, so.
Is that a Boland's on the back?
We've got a couple of them left in there. I have one that I took home to take a look at, but I will bring back. So if anybody wants to go through it, it's pretty cool. Shows basically our centennial, what things looked like in 1974 and much before. I saw Wally Fields in here. I saw his photo. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, oh, there it is. It's some right there. So I encourage you to come on, stop on in, take a look through it. It's kind of neat, especially now that we've got our 100-year fire department anniversary coming up. There's neat history in here to take a look at. Apparently, there's a really big flood here in 1924, but I digress. All right, items for future consideration.
President. So I will be making a report here, next time I have a report, but I just want to let everyone know here as best I can. Please pay attention to what's going on in all parts of the government here. I was very disturbed at what happened on Wednesday at the county level. Just to give everyone a brief heads up, I know it's been a long night, but basically, the county approved to take approximately a little over $1 million out of the EMS funding to pay for some nonprofit organizations. Now, majority of it was roofs, but pretty much the tone I got was, well, forget fire and EMS. They've had a year to put things together and they didn't get it done. So if they're not going to spend that money, then we're going to find other ways to spend it. Obviously, I completely disagree. I think with these ARPA funds that we've got, we should be using them towards fire and EMS to better the whole entire county, not just the north end. So if you get a chance, like I said, please pay attention, call, email any supervisors, anything, even at the state level. I mean, we need all the help we can get here, but this was my fear all along, that when you get 26 people in a room and about $18 million to figure out what you want to do with it, they're going to figure out any which way they can to either get pet projects or however they want to do it. So I'm standing up strong for EMS services. I'm going to continue to fight. I think that's the right thing to do, but please pay attention because I was very disappointed with the way Wednesday went. So
They took $1 billion? They gave it already, or are they thinking?
no, it's already done.
We got, what, 2 more years of requests?
Hold on,
So they took $1 million and transferred it to where?
nonprofits.
We're supposed to be, we're supposed to have 2 more budget requests,
Doesn't make any sense.
and they're giving that money away.
It's the nonprofit.
I don't want to flash pad and stuff like that, you know, not.
Correct.
And yet, when now did not get any of our stuff done until November.
Correct.
Yeah,
So the entire Woonsocket County has first had 5 months, 6 months.
6 months,
of
yeah.
it done. That's not enough time, right?
Yeah.
To do what they're asking.
so we're the only one with a budget request then?
He literally, no,
Not yet, you don't have a budget request yet. You don't have any budget request.
he literally got up there and said, if we're gonna use the money, he was not certain of how much money EMS was going to use, but he was confident that the money that they wanted to spend on nonprofits was still gonna be sufficient enough for EMS services, but did not have a final total. And a majority of the county board said, well, I don't care, nonprofits have been waiting long enough, let's just go ahead and do this without even knowing what we have for actual numbers that we're gonna use. So I think I'll have to look back, but I watched yesterday, I think 4 people, I made a motion to postpone until we had those numbers. I think only 4 people agreed with me. Out of all that.
Yeah, but what is nonprofits? What the hell does that mean?
That's like,
Family- no, it's like
Don't pay taxes.
family sharing, the OED, but anyway, that's just. We got another.
I got,
I can't maybe use our fund for that, sorry.
Yeah. I don't understand. You just-
Who led that charge?
Couple people, I'll talk.
He gets right.
Bruce, what do you got?
just for future, Chris and I and Eric rode around the guy's trannies going out of his car. He already put out a word to Marshall Dable about maybe shifting 24 budget for his new car. You know, he's talking to him about that. We also noticed that there was big time lateral problems down on where the shop is. That's gonna be big money. The generator down at the sewer plant. That needs to be addressed. Because it causes problems when we do have power outages, as far as taking care of our sanitary use down there. And then, also, not to rain on your parade, but that ARPA funds for the $48,000 that we put towards an amphibious vehicle. I think that I wanna talk to public safety. The chair of public safety, which is you, to see if we can't shift that money back out of there so we can take care of some problems at hand.
Make a list, so we have a list
I got lists, yeah.
for budget hearings this fall.
But I talked to Chris about it and I was gonna talk to Dan about it. And I think it's a wise. I mean, it's wise.
We'll have to see what the number 2s and 3s and 4s are when we get to the budget. I'm not so sure that we did allocate.
Yeah, it's in 24 budget, 48 grand.
Thought I remembered striking that.
Well,
So
it's
the
too bad you
amphibious
lost.
vehicle is on- It's in it.
Yeah, we
for
took
years, CIP. Looks like it's still a standing item, but it's not like it's set in stone.
Just like the splash pad,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. But I mean,
Motion
It is.
to adjourn.
I have one more thing before we do that. No, I can't remember this. Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, no, so there's something.
I was actually gonna update about something important. So if if you didn't see in Madison, they're taking
have the Robert's rules.
I'm sorry. If you didn't see in Madison, they are taking up the budget. In that, they are discussing a possible sharing of 1% of the sales tax, the state sales tax, with local municipalities to increase state shared revenues.
And not give it to the counties to be.
And not to the counties, correct? Go straight to the municipalities. Doing some very, very quick math when I found out about it this morning.
120,000.
For a village our size, actually, wow, you're really good. Yeah, it would be almost $120,000 of extra dollars that we would net as a village. To use for whatever, the state legislature obviously wants us to use it for, you know, fire, EMS, all that good stuff. So if you have a chance to talk to your state representatives, please let them know to vote in favor of that.
We'll be in Newburgh Friday next week.
There you go.
All right, have we had enough? All right.
okay, yep. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody else want to make the motion?
I can't, so.
I'll just second it.
That sounds good. I have a motion in a second. We are adjourned.
Did we vote on it?
Yeah.
You can declare us adjourned if you-
I was gonna say, I could just declare us. Well, that's where I was getting. Anyway, all those in favor?
Aye.
I oppose, the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have an outstanding evening. Thank you for helping keep order during chicken debates.
I got two guys here.
I have a stack of stuff to show.